Spiderverse story review by numerous authors, pencilers, colorists, letterers, editors, and assistant editors. It was released on April 29th, 2015. This is a 600-page monster of a book, and at a price of $29.99 on Comixology, not sponsored by the way, or $25.49 with the unlimited discount, or just borrow it. This seems to be all you need to follow the Spiderverse storyline, which includes these beings that go after the Spider-Man across all dimensions, and this somehow involves either stealing their totem energy or killing them, or eating them, which kills them. If you have been enjoying my reviews and my regular content, please do the YouTube thing, beat the algorithm, and help this channel grow. Now let's discuss. Now, usually I would break down with my usual categories, but considering the numerous different authors and artists and colorists and inkers, etc., I'm sure you don't want to hear a breakdown per artist and whatnot, and that would make a very long video, something that I really don't want to do, and my viewers barely watch the entire videos as is, so let's be simple and divide it into 3 parts: art, story, and themes. The art is great overall, nothing outside the usual issues of American comics, namely the fight scenes and the actions are very typical of American comics because you have multiple different writers and artists. You don't have too much of the different interpretations of the same characters, which can make it jarring and, just not that good overall. That being said, the biggest selling point of this book is the numerous Spider-Men that we see and Spider-Women. All the different iterations and artist interpretations is just simply great fun. The themes, well, the themes didn't exactly pop out. There's no real big question like existentialism or anything like that here. I mean, you do have that whole thing about, fate and whatnot and how it's weaved together. But, that sort of leap isn't kind of hard to do when you're dealing with spiders and, webs and whatnot. Though I don't think we see much of anything else because the story is just dealing with an outside force, these people attacking the Spider-Man in different dimensions, I should say, not directions. As for the reason why, it really isn't that deep, but then again, was anyone really expecting anything deep from this? I mean, it might have been explained from another comic book if I remember correctly, because it hinted at something similar that happened before, but, this one, not so much. The plot is somewhat convoluted and circular. Spoilers alert. It can be summed up like this. We have a family that can travel dimensions, and they hunt spider people, mostly Spider-Man, Peter Parker. We don't really know why they do it. They also have a giant spider fate weaver thing that leads them to the other spider people, and so while the deaths of the Spider-Man is going on, we have the superior Spider-Man or Doc Ock Spider-Man gather up other spider people to fight this, family. Eventually, the original Spider-Man of the 616 universe, which was part of the Doc Ock Spider-Man universe, but in the future, is brought into this conflict, and thus the big final battle. And not to mention, we get some backstory and some side stories mixed in. So, yeah. Not exactly the most riveting as far as plot is concerned. It's pretty basic, but it's still fun. Conclusions. In many ways, this is what the best that Marvel has published in recent times. Recent time being the past 10 years or so. It reminds me of one of those long-form story arcs that was set, basically the decades before as the standards. This is probably one of the best strengths that comes from US Comics. And once you gather all the issues of whatever arc, the story just comes together and it is that much more enjoyable. But I can only imagine what this was like when you split this comic into the 15 to 19-ish pages that it originally was. It would definitely mess with the pacing and storytelling. Another downside of this is the sheer number of characters, specifically all the different Spider-Men, which, it's fun, but there's a lot of them, and clearly the stakes were set by the death of several different Spider-Men, but without the sense of history or knowing the different variations of the Spider-Men, and their deaths are only superficially shocking. It feels that in order to fully appreciate the weight of each character, one has to have an idea of each story these character variations were in, and if you don't, you might be like, oh, kind of, is this a big deal? Don't know. Another con that I saw was the lack of power descriptions. Now, this family of spider totem consumers are stronger and faster than the spider people, but that doesn't seem that they can do some of the things that the other spider people can do. What am I trying to say? Oh, it's not consistent, because, they're supposed to be stronger and faster than, regular Spider-Man, but somehow, they could take on beings like the Cosmic Spider-Man and other variations who are stronger than our 616 counterparts, and, they take them down, like, pretty much one shot, and that's not exactly, a good thing. Speaking of variations, this is also somewhat of a time travel story. I know there are different dimensions, but the missing spider people during this time should have consequences within their own universe, but in part due to practicality, we wouldn't be able to see that. Not to mention, this whole Rick and Morty-esque of multiple dimensions of infinite spider people makes the stakes somewhat, not so high stakes. After all, in infinity minus X number of spider people is still an infinity number of spider people. And spoiler alert, the fate-weaving spider is part of the hunter family that we see at the beginning, but an older version of it, and, so there's that. So it comes into the cycle thing, which is, again, time traveling. So, which may play to the themes of the book, but it's probably more coincidental that it happened this way than purposeful. Now, these criticisms should not be taken as if I hated the experience of reading this book. I did enjoy it, and the price given, it really is quite the bargain. I mean, they could have easily turned this into 3 or 4 volumes and charged you like $20-25 a piece, but instead they just give it to us in one big book, and it may have taken me an hour to read through 600 some pages. It was an enjoyable hour to read through, and the variations of the different spider people were great. My personal favorite was Silk. I thought she was a great addition to the Spider-Man universe, and somewhat underused in the current Marvel canon, but it shows us that even in the modern age of comics, there are still plenty of stories to tell. I personally also like Spider-Gwen, Maybe Parker, I mentioned Silk, of course, but Jessica Drew was interesting as well. Not to mention we saw the return of Ben Reilly and Kane as well. A lot of little throwbacks there. There were certainly many good moments with excellent illustrations to go along with it. So overall, if I had to rate this on my usual scale, it would definitely be 7. 5 stars and 2 pluses, especially for the art. I liked the art very much. The story and the themes were, they were good. A good standard that Marvel should always try to live up to. Thank you for taking this time to listen to the review of the Spider-Verse storyline, I guess. It was a fun read. I hope you do enjoy this sort of content. If you do the YouTube thing, feed the algorithm by subscribe, and leaving a comments and whatnot. And I hope you are having a good day or a good evening. Ciao, everybody.